Hi everybody, this is the final installment on our Making a Medieval Crossbow video series, and today's video is all about finishing up. So last time we saw how to bind on the prod, so all we really need to do now is string the prod, add in the trigger, also the nut, installing that, binding that in, and finally adding on the bolt clip. And then we'll be ready to test shoot it. So the first thing that we're going to do in this process is to put the string onto the prod. Now the method that we are going to use for this is using something called a bastard string, which is essentially using a fake crossbow string that's loose, putting that onto the crossbow and basically using that to bend the prod so that we can get the loops of the actual crossbow string onto the nocks. Another way that you can do this is if you have on hand a bow press. That's a very easy way to get the string onto the prod. The challenge here is that the prod is quite stiff, particularly in comparison to a normal hand bow. So it can be a bit of a challenge to do this. Now the draw weight of the prod for the Medieval Crossbow kit is only about 70 to 75 pounds. So it is definitely possible to do this with just by yourself. However, if you have a friend around, it's much easier if you have two people to do it. However, the method that I'm going to show you today is absolutely possible to do with one person. One of the things that you can do to help, as you will see in pulling the bastard string to bend the prod enough, is essentially a thick leather glove, because that really can give you a little bit more power, and so that the string won't cut into your hand. So to start with, for that bastard string, you're going to want a piece of paracord that's about half again as long as the prod. Next, you're going to use something called a constrictor knot in both ends to loop around the ends of the prod to give it a very strong hold on the prod as you're bending it, but it's also a knot that's very, very easy to loosen once you've got the string on. So I'll show you how to do that next. So to create the constrictor knot that you'll need to string the prod, take your length of paracord, and with one end, make one loop, like so, and then another identical loop right next to it. Then take the first loop, move it on top of the second loop, and then that loop is ready to go around the end of your prod. Then you simply repeat the process on the other side of the prod and gradually cinch up the main body of the paracord so that it's nice and tight over the length of the prod. So again, we're taking our constrictor knot, one loop, a second loop behind, and we're popping that right on the end of the prod and cinching it down nice and tight just by pulling on both ends. Then we're going to repeat that process on the other end. Once you have your bastard string, your paracord in place, fairly tight, you're ready to add on your crossbow string. And to do that, you're first going to take one loop and loop it right over the nock, past the nock, and down onto the limb just a little bit. Then you're going to flip it around, take the other loop, and put it securely in the nock of the prod. Then you can push the other loop up the string just a little bit. Now, you are ready to string the prod. So place one foot into the stirrup and pulling with one hand, pull that bastard string back until you get some slack on the crossbow string and slide the loop up into the nock. And that's a job done. And now you can simply loosen up that constrictor knot just by wiggling it back and forth, and that should come apart pretty easily, and you can take the bastard string off the crossbow. So start by flipping over the crossbow onto its back, revealing the slot. And you can insert the trigger lever right into the slot. And here you're going to need to line up the hole in the trigger lever with the hole in the tiller, which, to be honest, can be tricky sometimes. I'm having a little bit of a hard time with it here. It's a fairly tight fit, so it doesn't fall out, so you can tap it the rest of the way with a hammer, nice and gently. And that's the trigger in. Next, we're going to insert the nut. This is simply pulling the trigger back and slotting the nut into place. You can rotate it, and then you can feel the trigger lock in with the sear, and then you know it's functioning properly. And finally, we're just going to bind in the nut. Now, this binding is fairly thin hemp cord. It doesn't need to be strong at all. It's simply there to make sure that the nut doesn't jump out of the hole when you're shooting. So this cord here bears no weight at all when the nut is under load. So simply take one end of the cord and poke it through the hole. You can use a bit of wire here to help with threading it through if you need to. And simply loop it around the tiller 4 or 5 times or more. And once you've got it looped around, again, 4 or 5 times, you can finish it with a simple square knot. It doesn't need to be super tight. Again, this bears no load whatsoever. And cut off the excess with a knife or scissors, and you're done. So the final part in this process of assembly is attaching the bolt clip. Now you want to drill a pilot hole centered on the tiller, and then simply take approximately 3/4 inch screw and screw that in through the hole in the bolt clip right into the tiller. You want it firm enough that it stays aligned or in place via friction, but not so tight that you can't rotate it out of the way, which you'll need to do when spanning the bow. Okay, so after all that work, you've shaped the tiller, you've decorated it, you've bound on the prod, you've installed the trigger and the nut, you've bound that on, the bolt clip, and you've strung the prod. There's your crossbow, and now comes the exciting part. We are ready to test it. Okay everybody, it is time for a test shoot. One important thing to note is never ever try to span the bow without having your safety block in place. So once you've made sure that the trigger is engaged with the nut, just insert your block, make sure it's tight. The only time that you should span the bow without the safety block is never. Yes, that never gets old. So much fun. Well, that's it for this video series. Thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks to everybody who purchased the Medieval Crossbow kit. If you're interested in getting in on the next run of Medieval Crossbow kits, please visit my website and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll be one of the first to know about the next run. In the meantime, I do plan on making some more how-to videos about building medieval and Renaissance crossbows, not just geared towards the Medieval Crossbow kit, but general information such as how to make a crossbow string, information on how to make a Schnapper lock, which is a very specific and different kind of crossbow lock than the one that we saw in this video series. If you have any ideas about what you'd like to see, please leave them in the comments below. And in the meantime, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.